All right, welcome back. This is Viewpoints Proposition Roundtable. We are now going to be discussing Proposition 5. All right, let's go ahead and open that up. It is the nonviolent drug offenders. It's going to develop rehabilitation programs for again, the nonviolent drug offenses. It's going to affect sentencing. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I think that rehabilitation is an option that the country as a whole has neglected for a very long time. We have more people in prison than any other country, and countries that devote more to rehab and rehabilitation programs, especially for nonviolent offenders, have significantly lower crime rates. So the argument that you're releasing thousands of criminals from jail and that all of these people that went through rehabilitation are immediately going to go out and commit a crime it doesn't seem valid to me.
Using the argument that we have more people in prison than any other country does not really, using that raw statistic does not take into effect the size of the country. Also, you know, the people that just get killed instead of put in jail, and there's all sorts of other things that is not a valid statistic to use as an argument in this situation. We also need to keep in mind the other factors of this. There are, well, first of all, the only argument until now that I had heard in favor of this was that it will save us money by taking more people out of the prison so we don't have to take care of them in the prison anymore. And I think that releasing people from jail for the sake of money is foolish and childish.
Well, the other argument, the one that you're saying you've only heard about money, the other argument, and this is backed by people who are also in favor of the use of medical marijuana and things like that, but the other argument is more about how this is for nonviolent offenders, people who are participating in illegal recreational drug use. Are these people, like, are the sentencing requirements, are the penalties, are they too strict? I think it's kind of stepping into that kind of territory. How do we want to treat nonviolent drug offenders? And are we going to throw them in jail, or are we going to throw them in rehab, is what I think the other argument is. Do you guys have anything to say on that? I could be off, but I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I want to say that someone who's addicted to cocaine or speed or anything and is just thrown in prison for 5 years is not going to get any help. They're going to get out on the street and get some more cocaine or speed. If you put them in rehab, then they actually get rehabilitation, they get better, and then they stop doing the drugs, hopefully. I mean, there's always relapse, but it's much more effective than just punishing them.
Well, and I agree with the concepts of doing rehabilitation for drug offenders because there's obviously an underlying cause, which is the drug addiction. The problem that I have with the bill is that there are a few other changes. That it's a classic California law. It works in a bunch of other unnecessary issues
away. Is that really classic California?
Yeah,
classic law.
No, well, okay, it could be classic law, but we're known well for doing that, where we work in things that aren't even necessary to the actual idea that we're trying to pass a law for. For one example is Section 4.1, subsection B. They have stricken the term "at the pleasure of the governor," meaning that the two new secretaries that they're assigning will have a 5-year term, and they won't be able to be dismissed by the governor, which will make them the only secretaries of state that do not get dismissed if they are not doing their job by the governor. It also would make it so that the Secretary of Rehabilitation and Parole does not have to be confirmed by the state Senate.
Do you think that any bureaucratic difficulties of this outweigh the good it's doing by placing all of these people in rehab? And
continue, and then I'll
okay.
But I tap next talk.
I think I forgot my second question. Thanks.
I apologize for interrupting your train of thought. But I do have a rebuttal for what you said. I think that every negative aspect of a proposition should be taken into consideration before voting, because you, as a voter, have the responsibility to read the text of a proposition. If you do not understand fully the proposition, you should not pass it because you don't know what you're voting for. What you're voting. And as far as bureaucratic, you know, if you want to put across the bureaucracy and just pass that on just so you could get the good of a law, I think that in that situation the law should be rewritten, not just passed for the sake of it.
But rewriting a law, passing a law will take time. And I think it's time that, you know, somebody that's addicted to meth doesn't have. Somebody addicted to heroin doesn't have the time for us to squabble over office work while they're addicted to heroin. I think it's a much more pressing issue, and that the rehab that's brought about, if there's a slight bit of waste, if there's a slight bit of, you know, people arguing over power at the very top, I don't...
So you think someone with unbridled power, with authority, should be put into place just so somebody can because honestly, I think it'll do more bad than good because you can't understand. No one can understand the bad that could come from this situation. You just can't think of it just as another political office. You know, you can't think of it as that. You have to think of the many unforeseen negative.
We're not appointing them king of California.
No one said they were.
You said unlimited power. And they're still going to be, you know, held accountable to the law, obviously. They may not be able to be fired by the governor, but they don't have...
By whom would they be fired?
Well, and I think that's the point, is you may say that it's a necessary and a great bill, and I agree with the idea and the concept, but a good idea does not make a good bill. And when you pass a law, it makes it that much harder to get a better law in its place that would actually do the things right. So I would rather wait a year and get another election cycle around than have a bill that's going to make some pretty drastic changes to the way we run our state parole system.
But the other side of that argument that the governor can't dismiss them is that they are limited to 5-year terms. So if they are being corrupt and terrible, then 5 years and they'll be out.
Under corruption, they can be removed by Congress.
Yeah.
It takes an act of Congress. The issue that it is why put it in there? It's one of those things that it doesn't need to be included in the bill. It shouldn't even be incorporated, and we really should address the issue at hand instead of putting in these little, you know, caveats so that people get some kind of benefit out of it.
But I think on Jay's point that we should pass this now and then we can work out the problems later, because this is already an addition to an old bill from the 90s.
That's what the state's been doing for the last 30 years, and that's why we have an $18 billion debt.
All right,
because we pass good ideas instead of passing good bills.
I hear a lot of bickering and a lot of snickering on this subject and everybody's rebuttals. I don't think we're going to come to a resolution. You guys seem pretty polar on this issue, but we're running out of time, so we're going to go ahead and cut it out on that. So Proposition 5, is it necessary rehabilitation for the health of nonviolent offenders, or is it a convoluted bill creating seats of unbridled power in California state legislation? You guys can decide. All right, thank you.